Is this world some kind of trick? Is it set up for us to fail? I say this even as a lifelong Bible-believing Christian. The specific context I'm referring to with this is relationships, women, and most of the topics that are covered under the MGTOW umbrella. Let me explain further. From the time we are young, even younger than adolescents, everything we do, or maybe everything we're set up to do, revolves around the approval and validation of mommy, and this later transfers to women as a whole. Let's face it, gentlemen, we are biologically hardwired to seek their companionship and their intimacy and approval. But this is where the trouble begins. No person deserves our worship, because that's in effect what this is. To seek someone's approval and also sacrifice for them, this is worship. And this is exactly why it's doomed to fail. Look at all the men of the Bible. Women were their downfall. Adam, he loved Eve so much that he deliberately went against God's commands. And then the fall of man ensued. You can read the story in Genesis. You could say that this is a microcosm of all of history, and a microcosm of each of us as individuals when it comes to our relationships with women. Then there's Moses. Moses' wife divorced him. At least that's what the scholars extrapolate from the text. Moses followed God's commands to circumcise all the newborns of Israel, and evidently his wife thought that this was cruel and abusive, so she left with the kids and went back to her homeland to live with her parents. Tell me that doesn't sound like 99% of divorces today. Then there's Samson and Delilah. Samson, as you know, was a man with not only brute strength, but also great internal fortitude. His wife Delilah kept nagging him to reveal his secrets to her about where he gets his strength from. What I think this really means was that she wanted him to fully trust her, to fully focus on her, and more importantly, give her his innermost secrets about what makes him so strong and resilient. The Bible says his secret was in his hair and his long hair. This is perhaps symbolism. Regardless, Samson gave into her nagging because Delilah insisted that if he didn't, it meant that he didn't love her. And so he did. And he didn't know that Delilah was in cahoots with the enemy, the Philistines. She gave his secrets to the Philistines, and the rest is history. The story goes on to say that the Philistines tore him down in battle. The list does not stop there. We have other people, other stories in the Bible, like the character Job, way back in the Old Testament. This is actually probably the oldest book in the Bible, some scholars think, even older than Genesis. Long story short, Job was greatly tested and he was afflicted with diseases. Everything he owned was destroyed. His family was even killed. And this was allowed by God. And he was allowed to suffer immensely. Then his wife comes into the story and she flat out told him to curse God and die. Nice. Real nice. His own flesh of flesh and bone of bone, telling him to throw away all of his integrity and take him off his path, which would ultimately be rewarded by God due to his faith and endurance. I could go on. We have Paul. He recommended that all men not marry. We have Jesus, perhaps the best example of all. My point is that we as men are hardwired to want something that destroys us. This seems to be paralleled by the New Testament with the concept of how the world and all its ways are wicked. We are taught to deny the flesh and to forsake the desires of the physical world. Does this include women? I swear I think so sometimes. And if it doesn't outright exclude them entirely, as Paul recommended when he said that it's better to not marry, then it certainly means at the least that we should hold them at arm's length, figuratively speaking. Basically, we have to somehow possess the most amazing toy and eat the most amazing food, the most delicious food, while at the same time not being obsessed with it. This is very hard. Can any man actually do this? I know the PUA community will say that they can, and maybe they're being honest. I don't know. But I personally can't. This is the great balancing act. This is the cosmic practical joke, you could say. Even biblically speaking, there is a debate as to whether we as humans deliberately chose, I should say, to follow the serpent in the Garden of Eden, or whether God planted him there for us to purposefully fail. Or maybe there's a third option. Maybe in all this mess we wind up learning something. Maybe it doesn't matter if we deliberately choose to get messed up and torn down with women, or if we are being set up. If it causes us to grow and develop as individuals, to reach our full potential that we otherwise wouldn't be able to, then maybe it's all worth it. I, for one, still prefer to be single. I've done plenty of trial by fire with my divorce and all, so I'm good for now. For now, I say. All it takes is a pretty smile, guys, right? Sometimes I doubt even the most hardened MGTOWs when they say that they're done for life. That's a pretty bold statement. As much as I say it, and I think a lot of MGTOW will say that, how can we always be sure? Are you? Post a comment below and tell me where you stand on this. Are all men just a BJ away from returning to the plantation? Could it potentially be harmful to swear off women altogether? Anyway, guys, like and subscribe and tell me what you think.